As Mr. and Miss Bouquet watched Penelope and Persia head to the swings on the playground, they began their discussion. They discuss what they have observed and how to conduct themselves around Persia. Mr. Bouquet began as he rubs his face, confounded at what he has seen, and how to deal with a child like Persia. I've never seen a child so much older in their behavior than their age. It's like dealing with a 10-year-old or 11-year-old when they're on the verge of being too old to be treated like a child. But she's barely 5. I'm not a child psychiatrist, but I'm sure at her age it's not healthy. I know as a dad, it might be awesome to have a child who can do so much for themselves, but she doesn't even know how to be her age. Did you notice how she stared when I cared for her, as I carried her? She and she was so small. It's so hard just to have her walk the long distance between, like, say, the car to this far into the huge park. Maybe we're only 500 feet, but if she walked that at her size, what energy would she have left to play? At this, Mr. McKay finally pauses, taking a breath and looking at his wife with true sadness. He runs his hands through his hair, slicking back the front away from his squared forehead that to Miss Bouquet are the perfect distance to his eyebrows and kind brown tinted hazel eyes. At this, she hands him a drink and replies, "Honey, I see it, and I know what it means. She's grown up with strict parents. Even as she wakes up, she goes through the routine. It's like clockwork. There is no way her parents are just standing there as she completes each part of her day. She functions like they aren't home. She doesn't expect any support in areas we would think is doting. However, maybe her parents would see the way we raise and interact with Penelope as though we're overbearing or doting and spoiling Penelope." Mr. Bouquet is a little shocked, and he stares a moment, processing things. Try to see from a different perspective. This was his wife. This was his wife's specialty. She could always empathize with others. It was like she was seeing the world from many views. It was why he knew she was the one that if he was to have a happy life and family, she was perfect to him in so many ways. Not that he believed there was perfection, but that term was still open to interpretation when you take into consideration all the types of people you meet as you travel through life. Mr. McKay nods and begins to drink the lightly sweetened lemonade with just the right amount of water. He didn't realize he was this thirsty. As Miss McKay watches him drink, she looks toward the girls. If he's drinking like that, they might be more thirsty than they realize from playing. It might have been 30 minutes since they got up to play. It had been 45 minutes at least since they arrived, and closing in on lunch soon. She checked her watch, keeping with the routine of the day. It would be lunchtime at school. Time to call the girls back. They would research and think of ways to allow Persia to be herself without having to be someone else's parents. They would for sure talk to the nanny so they don't overstep. She lifts her head, waves and pinches her lips for a high-pitched whistle and a few tones to signal time to return. As the girls come running a little slowly from across the playground near the slide, Miss Bouquet sets out the plates labeled with different sandwiches and a few types of small bags of chips and fruit cups. While they eat, the girls excitedly talk about the adventures only they can see and hear. They sip and eat between each of them, talking. Persia is describing a spelunking through a large cave they discovered on a beachside coast. How all the insects glow like the night sky as they explored. Penelope is describing running her hands through the cold water that has the glowing from the animals living in a cave stream. She says they discovered a bag full of explorer stuff like rope and maps and a colorful, soft-colored rainbow seashell. They say they didn't find who the bag belonged to, and were headed back to the beach when they were called to eat. The parents laughed, picturing the serious exploration and the joy of hearing their own child, deep in imaginative play. They took note of the way each child described what they were experiencing in the world of their making. Persia definitely used the words like bioluminescent species, while Penelope said glowing animals. Clearly, Persia explained what the terms she used meant, and Penelope used the easier to pronounce meaning of the words. The girls got quiet after a while, finishing their meals and very definitely looking sleepy. It was nap time. Time to head back. The drive would be short, so they would reach the house before each child was deep into a nap. As they arrived, they saw Persia's nanny there, closing the door of the vehicle and walking to the door of the apartment outside. They explained where they went and mentioned the book and the term bioluminescent that Persia used. They outlined how they would love to learn a few things to keep from causing Persia's parents any issues by treating her within acceptable parameters. Miss Amora said she would call them with some ideas from her professional point of view, which was the only way she was allowed to conduct herself with Persia. This brief conversation helped them gain a huge understanding into Persia's behavior. They sent thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Calvin for allowing Persia to stay over and enjoy a little time with Penelope. Persia was ushered home and bathed right after having been outside in nature. She was wrapped up in a towel, falling asleep as Nanny dried her. She laid her in her bed, as Persia had definitely overreached her physical limits. As Persia slept, she researched ways to help normal parents deal with a child like Persia that would be acceptable to her parents. As long as she was learning something new, Mr. and Mrs. Calvin wouldn't mind the trip and visits. She even planned how much a few suggestions would cost, and Persia's parents could provide the cost to Penelope's parents, so both children could experience the learning lessons together. Miss Amora worked until dinner time and finished just in time. Persia had seen her working hours after her 2-hour nap and gone to run her lesson from the laptop onto a projector. She might have been at 30 minutes when Nanny Amara called her for dinner. I'd like to discuss something you might like regarding more time with your friend outside of school. And she said, as she said this, Persia studied her face. It was an unusual smile, the smile she remembered having when she figured out how to get her mom and dad to let her do more child stuff. She had figured out how to get an affirmative without them thinking she would be wasting time she could be learning. It was easier now she had watched Nanny Amara plan her days out with of course from her mother. What an unusual smirk. That's the word, a smirk, was on Nanny Amara's face. She pulled out a chair as she began to eat, looking without verbally replying, with a nod to continue like she oftentimes had seen done at home. Alright, that's that for that part. See. Now I'll just chat a little bit. Use E00 on this one. This one is the lightest one. It's almost like a color splinter, so like Get her neck. Switch up. This is the E00. Put a little of this one for shadow. I really need that E15. Or maybe I could do the 93 for shadow. Yeah. Here we go. That's definitely shadow. Let me go over it one more time with their skin color. Before I forget, let me put it, swatch it over here. This is not the main skin color. Put it down here. This is part of the shadow and color. That's the E93. Put one more coat of the skin color on it so I can see some color. Alright, that was the E00. The other was the E000. If I don't round me, it just burn on like that.
This was a really good book.
Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Thanks for fighting to fight for our freedom and to keep this nation livable.
Here you go. Thanks. Whoa.